Actually, Jingles, it's perfectly possible for a B-25 to fly with up to 30% of its wing area shot. Oh, shut up. Howdy, folks. Welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. It is realistic battle time once more, and this is Bully, and he is flying the glorious Spitfire Mark IIb. The first Mark II Spitfires arrived just in time to see combat in the Battle of Britain, and they were a definite improvement over the Mark Is. They had a more powerful Merlin 12 engine, which had 120 more horsepower than the engines equipped on the late model Mark I Spitfires. Despite all of the Mark I and II Spitfires being phased out by late 1941, over 900 of these things were built, the overwhelming majority, 750 of them, being Mark IIAs, which were armed with 8 .303 caliber Browning machine guns. Lessons learned during the Battle of Britain led to extensive testing of the effective killing power of these Browning .303 caliber machine guns, and the Royal Air Force discovered quite early on that basically they were pretty terrible when it came to shooting down aircraft. And so, late during the production run of the Mark II Spitfires, a number were equipped with a pair of powerful 20mm Hispano cannons backed up by 4 .303 caliber machine guns, and these were the Mark IIBs. And that is what Bully is flying for us today in this War Thunder realistic battle, hopefully with none of the nonsense that went on in the intro. Let's just look at it for a moment, because it is an absolutely beautiful aircraft, and War Thunder is one hell of a pretty game when it comes to just admiring the scenery. Look at that. Aside from the Mark IIA and the Mark IIB, there were a couple of other subvariants of the Mark II Spitfires, but you're never going to see them in War Thunder. There was the Mark IIA LR, which stood for long range. The problem with the Spitfire was that while it was a superb high-performance fighter aircraft, it was originally designed for short-range defensive operations during the Battle of Britain. When the Royal Air Force switched over to offensive operations, they had problems because the Spitfire just couldn't fly very far. 60 Mark IIAs were converted to the long-range version by simply having a 30-gallon fuel tank stuck under the port wing. 3 squadrons used this version: number 66, 118 and 152 Squadron. It was eventually phased out in March 1942. The extra fuel capacity did give the Mark II the ability to escort bombers further into occupied Europe, but at a performance expense. The maximum speed came down from 357 to 344 miles per hour. Hang on a minute. Bully's actually spotted a target. He spotted him earlier. He's lost sight of him at the moment, but he's cruising down through the clouds on his last known location, and it looks like... there it is! Yep, it's an HE-111. This guy never saw him coming. Check this out. Boom! There's his first kill. That was a beautiful kill. Well done. You should probably, make sure he's gone down, because I hear that sometimes you can kill a bomber in a War Thunder realistic battle, and yet he still maintains the ability to carry on flying and bomb your airbase. So, I'm just saying. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes, other Spitfire Mark II variants. So we got the Mark IIA, we got the Mark IIB, we got the Mark IIA LR. There was a fourth, the Mark IIC. The Mark IIC was an air-sea rescue version of the Spitfire. Only, I think, 30 of them were built. They were essentially Mark IIBs. They still retained the 2 20mm cannons and the 4 .303 caliber machine guns, but they were also fitted with a couple of bomb racks. They would drop smoke bombs to mark the position of downed pilots in the English Channel. Now, you might be thinking, well, that seems like a bit of a waste of a Spitfire. I mean, at the time the Mark IIBs were in service, weren't there other, more obsolete aircraft? Bolt and Paul Defiance, for example, that could have been used in that role, rather than wasting a Spitfire on a job like that. Well, yeah, you'd be absolutely right, but the Mark IIBs weren't converted to this role until 1943, at which point, while it was still a beautiful aircraft, it was well past its sell-by date. What can be pretty confusing is that the Mark II was actually replaced in service by the Mark V. What happened to the Mark III and the Mark IV? Well, the Mark III was the first major redesign of the Spitfire. It was based around the Merlin 20 engine. It had a 2-speed supercharger. It was much more powerful, it had better high-altitude performance, it could carry more heavy armament, it was faster, and an order was placed for mass production of the Mark III, but it was very soon cancelled. The Merlin 20 engine was in short supply, and it was needed more urgently in the Hurricane Mark II. Meanwhile, Rolls-Royce had developed the Merlin 45, a similar engine that could be used in the Mark I or Mark II fuselage, so the Mark III was just abandoned completely in favour of the Mark V. Okay, what happened to the Mark IV? Oh, you're going to be sorry you asked that question. The Mark IV Spitfire is where things started to get really, really complicated. Technically, there was never a Mark IV Spitfire. But then again, technically there also was. Yeah. Hang on a minute, I'll explain. But first of all, we're going to watch Bully get his second kill of the game as he nails this Italian SM79 triple engine bomber. He's seen him coming, he's trying to evade. He's got some hits on the wings, some hits on the tail, and there we go, wings fallen off. And he's done. And I think Bully may be out of ammunition at this point. That was one of the other problems. I mean, it wasn't much of a problem. Having 60 rounds per gun of 20mm cannon ammunition meant that you had 60 rounds per gun more than any previous version of the Spitfire. But still, 60 rounds of ammunition is not an awful lot. I think they only had something like 330 rounds of ammunition for each 303 caliber machine gun as well. Enemy MC202 down there. Looks like he's going after that DB7. This DB7, by the way, leads these guys on a merry chase. He's practically impossible to kill. Does Bully still have ammunition left? I have to admit, I can't remember. I guess we're soon going to find out. Hang on. There's another one. Oh, it's one of the BF-110s on the tail of the DB7. Okay, so the MC202's bugging out. Let's see how much attention the BF-110's paying to what's going on around him. I'm guessing not a lot, and judging by the way he's attacking, yep, Bully definitely still has some ammunition. He scored a hit on the BF-110, and there is no way a BF-110 is going to outmaneuver a Spitfire. Oh, watch out, there's a BF-109E coming in as well. The MC202 is not a threat at the moment, but there's a BF-109E up above. I'm not sure what variant it is. Oh, look at these manoeuvres. All that flak, by the way, is friendly flak. And bang, there goes the BF-110. Where did the BF-109 go? Where is he? There he is, here he comes. Scored a hit, clipped his wing. Bully cannot have a lot of ammunition left at this stage. BF-109 is doing the right thing. He's not trying to get into a turning fight with a Spitfire. BF-109 and the Spitfire, certainly at this stage of development, were reasonably well matched aircraft. The differences between them at this stage of development were marginal, and it often came down to superior tactics and who was the better pilot. Basically, the Spitfire was better at medium altitude and in a turning dogfight, and the BF-109 was better at high altitude and high speeds. Other than that, they were very, very similar, very well matched aircraft. Unfortunately for the Luftwaffe, during the Battle of Britain, when they were going up against the Mark II Spitfires, the BF-109 pilots couldn't really exploit the advantages of their aircraft over their opposition. They were tied to the coattails of the bombers that they were escorting. And they suffered from the same problem that the Spitfire suffered when the Royal Air Force went onto the offensive after the Battle of Britain and had to escort bombers over occupied Europe. The BF-109 just didn't have the endurance for it. I recently watched a documentary in which there were several interviews with surviving Luftwaffe veterans of the Battle of Britain. The fighter pilots in particular were complaining bitterly about the limitations imposed on them by having to escort the bombers over the coast of Britain. The fighters would launch and then would have to loiter for anything up to 20 minutes waiting for the massed bomber squadrons to arrive, all get information, and only then head off to their targets in Britain over the English Channel. With the lack of fuel on the BF-109, it often meant that by the time they got anywhere near their targets, they only had something like 5 minutes of flight time remaining before they hit bingo fuel, and they'd have to abandon the bombers and then head back to their air bases in France. And most of the bombing raids conducted during the Battle of Britain by the Luftwaffe were conducted from medium altitude, an altitude at which the Spitfire was in its element. The BF-110s suffered horribly during the Battle of Britain. The whole heavy fighter concept was really a bit of a non-starter. At one point, the BF-110s that had been assigned to escort the bombers were suffering such losses that they actually had to have BF-109s assigned to them to escort them and protect them. It just got ridiculous. Eventually, during the later stages of the Battle of Britain, the whole heavy fighter concept was just abandoned completely, and the BF-110s were instead assigned to the Schnell bomber, the fast bomber role, kind of like the mission that the Ju-88 was originally envisioned for. And it did prove quite effective in that kind of role. Bully, by the way, is now 100% completely out of ammunition. That DB7 is on his own. So while he's heading for home, let's get back to the problems experienced by the BF-109 pilots during the Battle of Britain. It was primarily a question of tactics and technology. It wasn't always the case that whoever had the better aircraft won. The British coastal radar chains were a massive advantage in that we could see these massed bomber flotillas forming up long before they were in a position to actually do any damage, which gave the Royal Air Force the opportunity to position their fighter squadrons in the perfect height and location to jump on the bomber squadrons and tear them up before they got anywhere near the targets. The BF-109s, if they had been allowed to fly above the bombers at high altitude and intercept the Spitfires, would have done relatively well. But their orders meant that they had to stay in close formation with the bombers at medium altitude, and at medium altitude the Spitfire's the better aircraft. So the Spitfires not only knew how many aircraft they were going to be facing, what altitude they were at, and where they were, but they also got to dictate the terms of the engagement by loitering around at higher altitude and waiting for their targets to come within range. And this was intensely frustrating for the BF-109 pilots, and that guy's just been forced down by the DB7. I told you that DB7 was going to give these guys some problems. But yeah, intensely frustrating experience for the BF-109 pilots. Their advantages were at altitude and at high speed, and they just couldn't exploit these advantages because their orders insisted that they stay in close formation with the bombers, which put them in a situation where the Spitfires had all the advantages. Oh, look at that ship. Did you see that ship? That thing must have had at least, I don't know, 6 polygons on it. Look at that, that's terrible. Oh my god. Anyway, getting back to the game, Bully's heading for the airfield. The only problem is the airfield doesn't belong to his team yet. He's got to wait for the ground forces to capture it before he can actually land on it. So that's going to be interesting. There it is. It's over there. Now, it's just been decapped, so that's good. But he can't land on it with hostile anti-aircraft guns all over it. At the moment, the anti-aircraft guns are hostile. He's got to wait for that flag to turn completely blue before he can successfully land and rearm and refuel his Spitfire. Right now, it's still in enemy hands, although the ground forces have decapped, but the guns on the airfield are still red. Until the ground forces finish capturing and turn that flag fully blue, that is still a hostile airfield, and they're starting, and it's not going to take them much longer, but it's not going to take Bully much longer to get within range of those anti-aircraft guns, and they're still very, very, very hostile. Fly casual, Bully, because here it comes. Any second now they're going to open up on him. There it is. And it would be the height of embarrassment to get shot down right now. Come on, Bully. There it is. They've capped. They've turned blue. They're still shooting at him. Stop shooting, you bastards! And there it is. Now he can successfully land. But he's going a bit fast. He very nearly pulls off a spectacular Jingles landing here. Watch this. Oh, 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 that was close. Gear down. Still going a bit fast. Not too sure about this. Changes his mind. Yeah, no, we're not going to do this. Gear back up, throttle back up. Almost buries his wing in the hangar. I can't watch. Look at this. He almost makes a complete mess of this landing. In the finest traditions of my YouTube channel. But he successfully manages to avoid flying into, well, almost everything on the airfield. Brings it around on a pretty good approach. Gets the speed under 250 kilometers per hour, drops his flaps, drops his landing gear, and yeah, Jingles landing denied. Sorry guys, maybe next time. 30 seconds or so later, Bully has had his windscreen polished, he's been rearmed, he's been refueled, he's had the minor damage to the paintwork caused by the flak on the approach polished out of the airframe, and there was an enemy HE-112 loitering within a couple of kilometers of the airfield, but for some reason, possibly because he wasn't aware Bully was there, he didn't see him, didn't take advantage of nailing Bully while he was vulnerable on the airfield. While this HE-112 is conducting an unsuccessful boom and zoom attack on that F4 Wildcat, if you pay attention to the comment messages down there, you'll see that our friend in the DB7 has just gotten himself a proper kill and shot down a BF-109E, but he has just succumbed to an attack from a BF-110. So both teams have just lost one aircraft. Meanwhile, the F4 Wildcat, presumably out of ammunition, is heading for the airbase. Flak is coming up to meet that HE-112. He's got a definite height advantage and therefore an energy advantage over Bully. Bully's not climbing drastically to meet him. He's trying to maintain a decent rate of speed. And I was getting kind of anxious here. I was thinking, well, has he even seen this guy? I mean, surely he has. But, yep, the 112, not interested in attacking. Instead, he's going after the TBF Avenger. Now, at this point, surely the HE112 is going to go for Bully, and Bully's going to have to take evasive action. And again, I'm watching and I'm thinking, what the hell? He left that a bit late, but he pulls it around, he takes some minor damage, loops it around, gets himself on the tail of the HE112. The 112 makes the mistake of not continuing the zoom away, and instead he puts stress on the airframe by putting it into a turn at high speed. Bully causes structural damage to his wing, and the stress on the airframe from the G-forces that the 112 was pulling finish the job and take the wing clean off. You're quite welcome, Mr. Avenger. It was nothing. And there's Bully's 4th kill. There he goes. Pilot's bailed out. That is a definite kill. He is going down and he ain't coming back. So, how many of them are left? 3 BF-110C4s and an MC-202, and the aircraft remaining on Bully's team are not particularly good fighter aircraft. Then again, the BF-110 isn't a particularly good fighter aircraft either. Just saw the F-4 Wildcat there, heading back to land. There's the parachute from the downed HE-112, still in the air. There's another Spitfire on Bully's team, but he doesn't... Well, we haven't seen much of him. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing all the way back there at such high altitude. There are no enemies over there. Oh well, if you want a job done properly, you're just going to have to do it yourself. First, however, he's going to have to find the little buggers. About a minute later, a combat message pops up notifying the entire world that one of the enemy BF-110s is busy chewing up anti-aircraft guns. Well, there's only 2 places where he can be if he's shooting up anti-aircraft guns, and one of them is the airfield that Bully's just taken off from, so we know he's not over there. He's got to be in this direction. Bully doesn't have a lot of height, but then again, if the BF-110's shooting up anti-aircraft guns, he doesn't have a lot of height either, and the Spitfire is very, very manoeuvrable at low and medium altitudes. The BF-110 is not. He's got to be over here. And while he's getting closer, trying to ID his target, the TBF Avenger crashes on landing, so that's unfortunate. And bingo, there you go. Enemy aircraft being engaged by flak. Somebody by the name of Daisy Duke in a BF-110 was shooting up anti-aircraft guns. Bully checks his 6, gets closer, IDs the target. It is Daisy Duke. This is the guy who was farming kills on the AA guns on the airstrip over here. If it had been somebody other than Daisy Duke, well, that tells us that there are 2 BF-110s flying around here. So this doesn't necessarily mean that this guy's alone, but one problem at a time. Sets up for a side attack on the BF-110, which is always the best way to attack one of these things, because that means that the front 20mm cannons can't shoot at you and the tail gunner doesn't have a firing arc on you either. Takes him out. Kill number 5. Why are the anti-aircraft guns still firing? They can only be firing if there's something for them to fire at. Bully, scanning the sky, having a look around, trying to find the target, staying close to the ground to make himself a harder target to hit. There's the anti-aircraft fire. Where is he? Where is he? Over there to the left! And he's screwed up that attack run. Not entirely the BF-110 pilot's fault, of course. Bully did exactly the right thing. He knew he was under attack, but he didn't know exactly which direction the attack was coming from, so he used the available terrain at very, very low altitude to cover himself from the likely direction of attack, and the BF-110 also did the right thing. He didn't try to get involved in a turning fight with a Spitfire. He used the speed that he built up in the aborted dive attack to try to get as much distance between himself and Bully that he can successfully turn the aircraft around and bring his powerful 20mm cannon armament to bear on Bully's aircraft. But the longer he waits to do it, the closer Bully's going to get to him, because the Spitfire is a faster aircraft. The Wildcat makes a diving attack on the BF-110. This is by a country mile, but the BF-110 is forced to turn to avoid his attack, and this slows him down even further. There is absolutely no way this guy is going to be able to get away from Bully, and pretty much the only chance he's got is if he gets lucky with his tail gunner, or he's leading Bully towards his friends. Bully opens up first with his machine guns. This forces the enemy pilot to jink and dodge to avoid getting hit. This, of course, slows him down even further and allows Bully to get even closer. Once he's close enough to get some effective hits on target, he starts opening up with a 20mm. Remember, he's got to be accurate here. He does not have a lot of ammunition for these 20mm Hispanos. Only 60 rounds per gun. There's some flak coming up here as well, and I'm not entirely sure whose it is. I don't see any enemy shipping around. It has to be friendly flak, so it's just adding to the problems that this poor BF-110's got. He's doing absolutely everything he can to try to avoid getting shot down and ensure that his tail gunner gets the maximum possible shots at target, but there's really only one way this is going to end. No. He's done. He's done. He's lost control. Oh, there's the MC202. Did you see him? Bully's following the 110 down to make sure he is finished, but the MC202 is right there. There he is. Whoa, the Wildcat's diving on him. It's about time the Wildcat did something useful. That's the good news. The MC202's now got the Wildcat to worry about. The bad news, and the reason why Bully is frantically manoeuvring to try to get the hell out of here, is because he is out of ammunition. He is bone dry. He has used everything against those two BF-110s. The even worse news is the MC202 is not alone. The BF-110 that Bully just shot down with his last remaining ammunition was trying to lead Bully and the Wildcat towards his two surviving teammates. Now, again, it's a kind of a good news, bad news situation because the two remaining enemy pilots have split up. The MC202 is going after the F4. Bully has the undivided attention of the other enemy BF-110. And while he's throwing the aircraft around like this, it's kind of negating his speed advantage. But he is trying to kill this BF-110. He's just not doing it with his guns. What's this? Oh dear, that was kind of embarrassing, wasn't it? Bully's hanging around at low altitude like this for a reason. The BF-110 is going to try to set himself up for a diving attack on him, and the closer to the ground that Bully is, the better the chance that the BF-110 is going to leave it too late, as he just desperately tries to get those cannon shells to connect with Bully's airframe, and he's going to drive it right into a mountain, just like he did there. So now it's 2 against 1, but Bully's out of ammunition, he's heading back to rearm. That means the Wildcat has got the MC202 all to himself for the moment. Hang on a minute, what do you mean 2 against 1? What happened to the other Spitfire? Well, funny you should ask. He's managed to crash his plane. No, really. I don't know what he crashed into. It was 4.5 kilometres up the last time we saw him, but yep, he's managed to crash his aircraft. So his contribution to this realistic battle is to fly around at an altitude of about 4.5 kilometres for 25 minutes and then crash. So, yeah, there's that. So, how's the Wildcat doing with the MC202? Ah, right. Okay, that's not good. Well, that does simplify matters. Now it's just Bully against the MC202. We can probably assume that the MC202 has at least a reasonable chance of knowing what the hell he's doing. I mean, he's managed to get some kills, and he's the only one of the enemy team that's managed to survive this far. So, Bully versus MC202, once he's landed, and rearmed, of course. And I'm very sorry to disappoint you all, but no Jingles landing this time either. Come on, Bully, you can do better than that. Of course, the challenge now is for a lone Spitfire to find a lone MC202 in a lot of square miles of open sky. Assuming that the MC202 is going to be coming in his direction and trying to catch him when he's on the ground, rearming and refueling, Bully spins it around on the airstrip and heads off in the other direction. This way he stands a good chance of not being caught low and slow while trying to climb to some kind of reasonable altitude, and pounced on by the MC202 when he's at his most vulnerable. So, while he's trying to find this guy, I mentioned something about the Mark IV Spitfire earlier, didn't I? The mystery Mark IV Spitfire. Yeah, you thought I'd forgotten, didn't you? No such luck. So, we went from the Mark I Spitfire to the Mark II Spitfire, the Mark IIa, the Mark IIb, the Mark IIa long range, and the Mark IIc. The Mark II Spitfire succeeded by the Mark V Spitfire. What the hell happened to the Mark III? What the hell happened to the Mark IV? Well, we explained that the Mark III was a complete redesign of the Spitfire, but it ended up being cancelled, and the Mark V rushed into service. Well, why no Mark IV? Well, there kind of was and there kind of wasn't a Mark IV Spitfire. You see, the Royal Air Force, they just loved making things complicated. For a start, the Spitfires were not chronologically numbered. The Mark V was succeeded by the Mark IX. What happened to the Mark 6, 7 and 8? Well, they came after the Mark IX. What? That doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't make any sense, but that's the Royal Air Force for you. Well, anyway, some of the Mark I Spitfires were modified into what were known as the Mark I PR Spitfires. PR stood for Photo Reconnaissance. There were 5 different versions of these Photo Reconnaissance Spitfires. One of them, the Photo Reconnaissance Mark I Type D Spitfire, also known as the Extra Super Long Range Spitfire, carried so much fuel that it was nicknamed the Fuel Bowser. When the Air Force decided that actually this is starting to get confusing, we're going to renumber everything. This was what became known as the PR Mark IV Spitfire, which was kind of confusing because it was basically just a Mark I. Like I said, the Royal Air Force doesn't believe in keeping things simple. It doesn't stop there, however. Remember we said that there was never a Mark III Spitfire. The Mark III was designed, but ended up being scrapped and just replaced in production by the Mark Vs. Well, that's not strictly true either. There was another variant. I mean, obviously the Spitfire that became known as the Mark IV was actually the Mark I Photo Reconnaissance Type D Spitfire, or the Extra Super Long Range Spitfire, while there was also a Photo Reconnaissance Mark I Type C Spitfire. And when they eventually got around to standardizing the designations of all the different aircraft in service, this was the aircraft that became known as the Photo Reconnaissance Spitfire Mark III. So if anybody ever tries to tell you that there was never a Mark III or a Mark IV Spitfire, well, they're right, but they're wrong as well. Because Royal Air Force. Anyway, where's this bloody MC202? When Bully took off for the second time, when it was just him alone against this MC202, and he had to find him somewhere in this huge expanse of sky, 30 minutes of this battle had elapsed. When he finally locates this MC202, it's more than 10 minutes later, and the MC202 has a massive height and therefore energy advantage over him, which was kind of inevitable. The Italian MC202 was a fine aircraft, but the one area that it really excelled in was its rate of climb. It would be absolute suicide to try to climb to meet the MC202 at altitude. For a start, while you're climbing, you're low on speed, you're low on energy. The aircraft above you has the energy advantage anyway, and you have absolutely nothing in the bank when he bounces you. Apart from that, the Spitfire Mark II didn't have a twin-stage supercharger, so it just didn't perform well at high altitude in the first place. It was much more comfortable at medium and low altitude. And so, that being the only card that Bully really holds, he decides to put this thing down on the ground and force the MC202 to come down after him. The 202, of course, still has the luxury of picking when and where he's going to make his attacks, and Bully is very firmly on the defensive, but he's got a couple of cards up his sleeve when he's down at low altitude like this. For a start, he can make himself a more difficult target to spot in all the ground clutter, and secondly, well, he's already proven that he knows how to use the terrain to his advantage by using it to set people up to make bad attack runs and then attempt to catch them on the bounce when they're zooming away. And he ends up doing this for a really, really long time. That MC202 never seems to manage to get the perfect attack run on him, thanks to the way Bully is throwing the Spitfire around at mega low level, curving around the islands and the inlets and just denying the 202 the opportunity to set up for the perfect attack run. Over and over again, for the better part of 10 minutes, the MC202 would set up for a diving attack. Bully would lead him on a chase through the fjords and inlets, force him to overshoot, force him to miss. The MC202 kept refusing to take the bait and would constantly turn the speed from his dive back into altitude, zoom straight away, and set the whole thing up again. He never once took the bait. He never once tried to engage Bully on equal terms down in a turning dogfight at low altitude where, well, not even equal terms, Bully would have had all of the advantages. This went on for so long, Bully started to run out of fuel. Right now, Bully has less than a minute of fuel left. Whatever happens, it's going to be decided in the next minute. He's making a run for the airfield. He doesn't have any real chance of being able to land with the MC202 pursuing him, but at the same time the MC202 does not want to let him get within range of the airfield's anti-aircraft guns. The 202's coming in at an insane speed after that dive, but Bully swings it around and manages to clip him with a 20mm cannons, and it is all over. He's done it. 7 kills, but he's only got about 10 seconds. He's only got about 10 seconds of fuel left. And it ain't over till the fat lady sings. He's still got to put this thing down successfully while watching that ticket counter run down. Come on, Bully, do it. Oh, I don't know, you're going a bit fast. Are we going to get a Jingles landing? I think we are. I knew there was a Jingles landing in this replay somewhere. Thank you, Bully, for sending that one in. That was a phenomenal game to watch. Absolutely superb flying, shooting, tactics, use of terrain, everything. Very, very well done. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too, because that is it for today. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.